South Korea declares an end to the COVID-19 pandemic as it removes the last few remaining antivirus measures from June 1st, including the self-quarantine mandate. President Yoon will hold a bilateral summit with Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau next Wednesday in Seoul upon the 60th anniversary of diplomatic relations. U.S. inflation continues to soar for the 10th consecutive month in April. The question now, will the central bank freeze the rate at the next policy meeting? Good afternoon. Our top story this hour, South Korea has declared the end of the COVID-19 pandemic. And starting next month, the country will mark the complete return to normalcy, with all remaining antivirus restrictions to be scrapped, including the mandatory self-quarantine for those infected with the virus. Our Kim Jung-sil starts us off.
오늘 중대본에서 코로나 위기 경보를 심각에서 경계로 조정을 하고 6월부터 본격 적용하기로 했습니다. 3년 4개월 만에 국민들께서 일상을 되찾으시게 돼서 기쁘게 생각합니다.
On Thursday morning, President Yoon attended the COVID-19 disaster control meeting with 12 medical personnel, including doctors and nurses, who have been working tirelessly since the very first COVID-19 case in South Korea was reported back in January 2020.
일단 입고 있는 옷부터가 너무 덥고 활동하기 너무 힘들고 하여튼 실제로 가서 보지 않고는 의료진들이 얼마나 힘들고 고생을 했는지 느끼기가 쉽지 않을 것 같습니다. 이분들의 협업 덕분에 팬데믹을 극복할 수 있었습니다.
The government has also announced changes to the remaining COVID-19 related measures. From June 1st, the 7-day mandatory isolation period for confirmed cases will be reduced to a 5-day voluntary isolation. The recommended PCR test within 3 days for people arriving in the country will also be lifted. And the indoor mask mandate will be lifted in all places, only except for hospitals with inpatient wards. It's possible these new changes could come in sooner depending on the administrative process. Kim Jung-sil, Arirang News.
President Yoon will hold a bilateral summit with Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau next Wednesday in Seoul upon the 60th anniversary of diplomatic relations. South Korea's top office announced that the Canadian leader will arrive for a 3-day official visit next Tuesday, following Yoon's trip to Canada last September. The occasion will be a chance for the two countries to share their vision for future cooperation, according to spokesperson Lee Do-eun. He added that the leaders will also celebrate the history of friendship and cooperation between the two countries based on their shared universal values, such as freedom, democracy, and the rule of law. South Korea is gearing up to ramp up trilateral efforts with the U.S. and Japan on real-time information sharing on North Korean missile alerts. That's according to U.S. Army spokesperson Martin Miners, speaking to Voice of America, where he stressed the importance of this three-way cooperation in addressing challenges posed by North Korea's weaponry and nuclear ambitions. The plan to bolster information sharing follows the promise made between the leaders of the three countries last November during a summit in Cambodia. Adding to this, U.S. Army Pacific Commanding General Charles Flynn highlighted that U.S. forces in South Korea operating closely with South Korean military will play a key role in this process. Flynn pointed out their integrated team, strong headquarters presence, and effective information sharing systems make them well-positioned for this task. The Korea Development Institute forecasts that South Korea's economic growth will rise above 2% in 2024, rebounding from this year. According to a report published by KDI on Wednesday, economic growth in 2023 is expected to be 1.5%, down from February's 1.8% forecast. The think tank cited the ongoing slumping demand for chips, a key South Korean export item, as a reason for the sluggish growth. However, economic growth next year is expected to reach 2.3% as the chip sector begins to recover. In terms of consumer inflation, the think tank lowered its 2024 forecast to 2.4%, down from 3.4% this year. U.S. inflation continues to soar for the 10th consecutive month in April. The question now, will the central bank freeze the rate at the next policy meeting? Our Lee Seung-jae has more.
According to the U.S. Labor Department's Consumer Price Index released on Wednesday, U.S. consumer prices rose 4.9% on year, down from the 5% reported in March. The latest numbers show that the U.S. is seeing inflation slowing for a 10th straight month, a huge decline from its 40-year high of 9.1% seen last June. April's inflation figure is also the smallest yearly increase since April 2021. On a monthly basis, however, consumer prices have increased 0.4%, following a 0.1% increase in March. The latest inflation figures come on the back of another drop in grocery bills, which offset a rebound in gasoline costs. Gasoline prices in April jumped 3%, while grocery prices dropped for a second straight month. Despite the mixed figures, there are signs that inflation is continuing to cool. And these signs are making economists wonder whether the U.S. Federal Reserve is finally ready for a rate freeze in their next FOMC meeting in June. The U.S. Central Bank has previously indicated that it will take into account future economic indicators such as inflation and employment trends, as well as April's CPI before it makes its decision on the key interest rate. Bloomberg noted that with clear signs of inflation easing, the U.S. Fed has room to freeze its rates in the next FOMC meeting. However, other watchers are less optimistic as inflation levels are still far from the U.S. Central Bank's target of 2%. The U.S. Fed earlier this month raised its key interest rate by another 25 basis points, the 10th consecutive time that rates were raised. The next FOMC meeting is slated for June 13th to the 14th. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Groups of doctors and nursing assistants are going on a partial strike, calling for a presidential veto on the recently passed Nursing Act that gives professional nurses more independence in their duties. This is the second time that a total of 13 associations of medical workers are going on a partial strike to protest the bill. They are working shortened hours and using their annual leave to take part in rallies across the country in the afternoon. If their demands are rejected, they're planning on a general strike on May 17th, which will have a far greater impact on the healthcare system. The Nursing Act seeks to improve nurses' working conditions by defining their roles and duties separately from the Medical Services Act, which puts them, quote, under the guidance of physicians. BLACKPINK Lisa has become the first K-pop solo artist to have an album reach 1 billion streams on Spotify. According to our agency YG Entertainment on Thursday, Guinness World Records confirmed that Lisa's single album La Lisa achieved the record 589 days after its release. Guinness also confirmed that Lisa has reached 1 billion Spotify streams in the shortest period of time ever for a K-pop solo female artist. Lisa is now the one and only K-pop solo singer with 7 Guinness World Records, which include her record for having the most viewed music video for a solo artist on YouTube in a 24-hour period. Google's AI chatbot Bard is now open to 180 countries, including here in South Korea. It's now become more accessible, there's no waitlist, and English is not the only language available. Lee Eun-jin reports.
Following the craze for the AI chatbot ChatGPT, Google has released its new conversational AI service, Bard, and it is available in languages beyond English with both Korean and Japanese an option. On Wednesday, local time in California, Google removed their waitlist for Bard, which was previously only available in the United States and the United Kingdom, and opened up its use to over 180 countries.
With more coming soon. And in addition to becoming available in more places, BARD is also becoming available in more languages. Beyond English, starting today, you'll be able to talk to BARD in Japanese and Korean.
Google's chatbot Bard is powered by the company's Palm 2 large language model. During its annual Google I/O Developer Conference on Wednesday, Google also announced that Bard is adding app integration to maximize its utility and collaborative potential. Google also announced that they are on track to support 40 more languages in the future, while noting that adding a language responsibly involves deep work to get things like quality and local nuances right. Google has also integrated Google Lens features directly into Bard. Users can upload a photo or image as a prompt for Bard. Using Google Lens, the chatbot will analyze the photo and draft a few creative captions, all within seconds. On top of these image-related features, Google is also expanding Bard's coding capabilities, as well as having plans to soon launch extensions, including Google's own apps and services like Maps, Sheets, Gmail, and Docs, while working with third-party partners to bring their services into Bard. 이은진, Arirang News.
Now, in our continuing series on President Yoon's first year in office, on the economic front, the past year was largely focused on the private sector, housing market, and people's livelihoods. Our finance correspondent Lee Dae-yeon looks at the progress made and challenges moving forward.
With a clear focus on freedom, innovation, fairness, and solidarity, the Yoon administration has been working on creating a private sector-led economy over the past year.
정부 주도가 아닌 민간 중심의 경제로 전환하여 일자리를 창출하고 중산층을 더욱 두텁게 할 것입니다.
The first step, boosting businesses. The Yoon administration has been working to ease more than 170 business regulations and 140 disciplinary measures by listening to the voices of frontline workers. It sought an increase in business investments by cutting corporate taxes, providing more tax credits for national strategic technologies, and temporary investment tax incentives. Next, innovation in the public sector. With a sound fiscal policy in mind, the government tightened the purse strings as the national budget bill had increased 5.1% this year from 2022. It has also focused on efficiency by reorganizing public institutes to reduce unnecessary quotas and expenses. The Yoon administration has also been proactively adopting an emergency framework to ease market concerns, including expanding the market liquidity public fund program amid volatile bonds and funds markets. 13 emergency economic meetings and over 20 ministerial roundtables were held to tame market fears. In terms of the housing market, it has eased some home loan regulations while abolishing tax penalties on multiple homeowners. Last but not least, the current administration is working to increase public welfare by protecting vulnerable groups. Despite global inflation, the country's inflation is back to the 3% level after 14 months and down from a peak of 6% last July. And it has reached an all-time high employment rate as well. Measures including lowering fuel taxes, providing energy vouchers, and expanding tariff rate quota on energy and food were also rolled out. Welfare expenses for low-income households rose 12% from the previous year. However, some concerns remain. Sluggish exports in the IT sector remain amid a drop in chip demand. Consumer prices, too, are still above the government's target, with fears lingering due to external factors such as commodity prices. One expert has some advice on the task the administration should focus on.
Other countries, for example, are using their budget to resolve the energy crisis while responding to industrial policy competition. The IRA and the US CHIPS Act are examples the South Korean government could look to.
He also agreed with how the government urged the importance of improving the market paradigm, such as nurturing talent and in creating a flexible industry ecosystem following industrial shifts. Lee Dae-yeon, Arirang News.
On the business front, the high-tech sector took center stage of the Yoon administration's industrial policy, which defines it as a strategic security asset. Our Shin Na-young has more.
For the past year, the Yoon administration has been putting in efforts to nurture high-tech industries and has been making reforms to boost investment.
첨단 산업은 핵심 성장 엔진이자 안보 전략 자산이고 우리 일자리와 민생과도 직결되고 있습니다.
In line with its goal, last October, it identified 12 national strategic technologies, including chips, secondary cell batteries, and robotics, and decided to invest 25 trillion Korean won, or roughly $18.8 billion US. Support for semiconductor chips, the country's major economic driver, has been particularly noticeable amid global competition to take the lead in the chip industry. The government earlier announced its plan to make the Seoul metropolitan area home to what would be the world's biggest hub for making system chips. It has also taken steps to support corporate activities through tax benefits. Through the so-called K-Chips Act, the tax deduction rate for conglomerates and medium-sized businesses in selected tech industries has risen from 8% to 15%, while for smaller businesses, it has risen from 16% to 25%. Boosting operations and exports of nuclear power plants has been also on the agenda under the goal to make the country a nuclear reactor superpower. Construction will soon resume at the Shinano nuclear power plant on reactors 3 and 4, which were halted in 2017 under the previous government's nuclear phase-out initiative. In terms of artificial intelligence, the government decided to spend around $300 million this year in spending infrastructure to develop AI. It also plans to nurture 10,000 software companies in the service sector at the center of an AI ecosystem by 2026. There were also remarkable achievements in the space industry, with the country's successful second launch of its homegrown Nuri space rocket, making it the 7th country in the world to have developed a space launch vehicle that can carry a satellite of more than a ton. This was followed by its first lunar orbiter Danuri, which successfully entered its target orbit of the moon. On top of that, there are plans to establish a National Aeronautics Administration, or Korean version of NASA, within this year. One expert said the Yoon administration's early moves have encouraged investment.
Delays in legislation and policy making hinder firms from investing. But over the past year, various policies were made regarding advanced industry strategies, reducing uncertainties for the firms. They've also absorbed a significant portion of investment risks.
He added that the government should continue to engage with the private sector through effective communication channels so that companies can better accept policies. 신하영, Arirang News.
At a time when Korean weapons are gaining more presence on the world stage, delegations from more than a dozen countries had the opportunity to watch live fire gunnery exercises in the city of Pocheon here in the nation. Our foreign affairs correspondent Bae Eun-ji was there.
South Korea's K-2 tank, armed with a 120mm gun, fires at a target about 2 kilometers away. After precisely hitting the mock target, more K-2 tanks and K-21 vehicles roll onto the battlefield. The demonstration was presented to a group of delegations from countries like Poland and Saudi Arabia that are interested in South Korean weapon systems. At this military base in Pocheon, officials from 18 different countries watched a live-fire demonstration of K-2 tanks and K-21 infantry vehicles. The event, organized by Seoul's foreign ministry, was aimed at presenting the capabilities of South Korean weapons. After seeing the demonstration, the officials even got a chance to get on board the K-2 tanks to get a first-hand experience of it. They also took a closer look at some other weapons on display, including South Korea's K-9 howitzer, K-239 Chunmoo multiple launcher rocket system, K-808 armor vehicle, and K-10 ammunition resupply vehicle. Chile's ambassador to South Korea said he was very impressed with all the artillery.
We have a MOU and cooperation agreements between the Ministry of Defense, both in procurement and also in cooperation in other issues. So we're always working together to find new opportunities for the Korean armor business.
The ambassador of the Czech Republic also said his country is looking into South Korea as a potential arms supplier to respond to the recent global situation that's become a more dangerous place with the war in Ukraine, along with many other conflicts.
So this is just the beginning, or hopefully maybe today, of our future cooperation also in the defense industry.
Last year, South Korea's arms exports hit a record high, selling $17.3 billion worth of weapons. That's about a 140% increase from the year before. South Korea ranks 9th in the world and aims to become the world's 4th largest arms exporter by 2027. The country's foreign ministry said it'll continue to support South Korean firms expand overseas. 배은지, Arirang News.
Let's take a look at what's going on in the world now. In the Gaza Strip, Israeli soldiers and Palestinian militants have exchanged some of the heaviest fire seen in the last 9 months. According to Israel, Palestinian militants fired over 460 rockets. 3 hit residential areas in Israel, but most were intercepted or fell in open areas. Israel also said that it's hit 130 militant targets so far. Medics in Gaza report that at least 6 people have been killed, 4 of whom were confirmed as militants. This follows airstrikes from the Israeli Defense Force on Tuesday, which targeted Islamic Jihad militants. The strikes killed 15 people, including 3 militant commanders. Turning over to the United Kingdom, where its fertility regulator has confirmed the birth of babies that were made using the DNA of 3 people in an experimental technique. Announced on Wednesday, it's a first for the UK. Called mitochondrial donation treatment, the procedure is a form of genetic modification. It's meant to prevent the inheritance of rare genetic mitochondrial diseases such as muscular dystrophy, epilepsy, and heart problems. It does this by replacing defective genetic material from a mother with a healthy version from another woman's egg. Only 0.1% of the donor's genetic material is used. According to the UK's Human Fertilisation and Embryology Authority, fewer than 5 babies have been born this way. In the United States, Republican lawmaker George Santos has pled not guilty to 13 federal charges at a New York court on Wednesday. The New York representative is accused of misusing funds, illegally receiving unemployment benefits, and lying to Congress about his income. It comes amid a wave of revelations that the 34-year-old has embellished his background, including claiming to have lost his mother in the 9/11 Twin Towers attack, and that he had previously worked at Citigroup and Goldman Sachs. Santos has called the case inaccurate, describing the investigation into him as a witch hunt, and is refusing to step down from Congress. If found guilty, Santos could face up to 20 years in prison. And finally, Hollywood star Robert De Niro has become a father for the 7th time at the age of 79. The veteran actor revealed that he had recently welcomed his new child during an interview on ET Canada to talk about his upcoming film, About My Father. The 2-time Oscar Award winner did not reveal much else, including the identity of the child's mother, although his most recent reported romance was with martial arts instructor Tiffany Chen. De Niro has 6 other children from 3 previous relationships. His oldest child is 51. Matthew Ashley, Arirang News.
Good afternoon. Take good care when out in the sun today due to rising levels of UV rays. UV levels are high to very high nationwide, while ozone levels should reach bad levels as well. So please use sunblock and hats and drink plenty of water to stay hydrated. Afternoon highs are 1 to 4 degrees higher than season norms, and western parts of the country should have daytime highs hovering above 25 degrees Celsius. However, regions in the East Coast will have much breezier daytime highs due to easterly winds topping out at upper teens. Air quality are decent in most areas, but some of the west are having bad dust level today. But air quality should return to normal as the day goes on. Heat will subside a bit with more clouds moving in tomorrow, with rain in the forecast in the south coast and Jeju Island from tomorrow night into Saturday. Meanwhile, temperatures will jump back to summer range next week. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
Thank you so much for watching. Have a great rest of the day.